you so much for both of you for joining. I have a couple of superstars here joining me. Robert Powell and Blake Fuller. Robert is a friend who is with the Rocky Mountain Rivian Club. He now lives in Texas, but he's always a member of the club. Blake is a pro driver, and we've got some video. Oh yeah, there you go. We've got some video to get to, but I just wanted to do a little bit of pre-discussion here and talk a little bit about you guys and about what you do. One thing I want to say about Robert, he was with me up at Rollins Pass at a drive recently, a four-wheel drive event recently, and I now nicknamed him Full Send because he was the one that we could count on to go as fast as possible through a giant puddle or something. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll get more of those in the future. So Robert, you're an R1T owner, but I want to shift to Blake a little bit. You have the record for EV at Pike's Peak, right?
We have two records that are at Pike's Peak. We did set an electric vehicle record in 2016, and then the car that's the lower vehicle there, the Model 3 Performance, we came back out and bettered that time with a new record in 2020. And then in the hill climbing efforts, there are also two records that we have at Mount Washington with a Tesla.
Oh, nice.
And that was with the Plaid.
This is actually a Formula One classified track. So this is the highest standing of a track certification you can get. And the really nice thing about it is turn one there is the highest elevation change in any racetrack ever. And so it's a technical course. It's a very technical track, not as technical as Pike's Peak. There's not 159 corners, but it's still a very technical track. So,
and just to be clear, you're doing this in the stock R1T with the all-terrains 20s?
Yeah, so I'm in an R1T with stock all-terrains. So the only modification is I'm not using the Pirellis. I'm using stock Yokohamas as my all-terrains.
Blake, is there anything special we need to know about this track? What's the special thing about this track? How do you like driving it?
It's actually a really technical track that has some very interesting elements that in every track there's always a compromise with how corners come together and how you're able to put together segments. And I will say that the S's section, basically as you come through out of 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, that area really highlights a vehicle's transitional ability to, basically maintain momentum through there. A vehicle has to have a lot of transient response and be very stable. If a car is not able to maintain kind of a fore-aft stability, you're always chasing the vehicle through there, and you're not able to really put down a good lap time because you're having to check up a lot. As we watched the video, that was like the Full Send first foray was coming down of, hey, how is this big old beast going to do in what is really a huge high-speed slalom, right?
Had you driven the R1T around the track yet, or was this the very first time around before?
Who watches the video with a dry run, jumping in there? I had driven the R1T once in Colorado, really briefly, and I think once before on the street in Texas. But outside of that, that was this was the first touch point at speed, so it's kind of like
He literally had maybe 5 minutes of total touch time in the truck before he jumped in it and full.
So you're feeling it out as you go around at I don't know how many miles an hour. That's another thing I want to point out. The cameras, and Robert set up 3 cameras here. We're gonna watch through Blake's helmet cam here, and then I'll add some video later, either at the end of this video or a separate video where you can see all 3 different angles. But the cameras were intentionally placed where you couldn't see the speedometer. I want you to tell me why.
That was not intentional. I will say that the 360 camera is pretty neat, and if we have a chance to edit that, it's such that you can get some really cool perspectives of what's happening to the vehicle as you move around. And just clarity, we were there thanks to Chin Track Days. So I have worked with that group for 20 plus years, and they are not only it is a high performance driving track day. So it wasn't a race per se, but it actually is something where if somebody had a Rivian and wanted to be able to go out and get a sense for the vehicle at speed, you can sign up as a novice and you will have a professional instructor with you. And you get a chance to be able to enjoy your vehicle's limits, as well as their Chin in general is just super accommodating to electric vehicles, which is wonderful.
Cool.
And it is a very expensive track to run it. And thanks to Chin, they have made it affordable for people to come out. And the other bit, just to
Cool.
mention real quick, is that, which is why a full send felt more comfortable, is that as part of an F1 track, there are certain mandated amount of runoff areas and so on. So while it seems like death's toll was about to ring at any moment, in reality, it has a lot of cushion area for runoff. But again, physics are physics. We've got a 5,000-pound truck hurtling 100 miles an hour. So yeah, I guess we'll go ahead and send it.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do, this is an 8-minute little clip. You go around the track 2 times, and I'm just going to play it. I want you guys to give me a little bit of a play-by-play as to what's happening. I have some questions to throw in here and there as well. So we're going to just start off.
Probably off. Okay. Unless it just sends it full sideways.
So you pull up to these 2 that are stopping you for some reason. They're just doing a check.
Yeah, they're checking for making sure that we have appropriate armbands and helmets and everything on. Yeah. I can't adjust the seat while it's moving.
Watch your braking up here. This is not going to corner like a plaid.
I think we have like a Porsche GT3 that's going to come by on the road.
Yeah, we're the GT3 that just took us by.
Okay, so now are we coming into the turns you were talking about?
Yeah, so this will be the entrance to the chicane here. Yeah. So one thing I will note is that this turn that we came through now, we actually went, and actually moved across the side. Whereas the next time, we're actually just going to cut straight through it. So.
Okay. Yeah, and you might have heard that Robert says, bad idea. Bad idea.
Bad idea.
Like, no,
Bad
idea.
It feels great for a truck. Holy shit.
So what was nice about the Rivian is that going into, I think, what would be turn 6 or 7, that right-hand turn, it actually had a nice little bit of kind of lift-off, oversteer, and kind of trail braking capability to tuck in. And you could feel the motors working. And Robert, we need to clarify this, but I think we were kind of at a setting where if 10 would be full traction control off, 1 would be everything on. I think we were somewhere like a 6 or a 7. Like we weren't.
Yeah, we were
still
about
some
a
stability.
7 or 8. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a very, very long straight. In the Plaid, the top speed through here will be at 175. You'll hit the limiter at track mode. But braking is a bit of an issue here because we've got a heavy car and a lot of momentum. I think we're doing about 118, 120 in the Rivian. Did we hit the top speed?
We were doing 111. We were maxed out.
Oh my god, I feel like I'm playing a video game.
Okay.
And that's 111 on the speedometer, which in real speed might be a little bit faster too.
Yeah, there was just probably a hair over that, but not by much.
And I noticed obviously there are other vehicles here. Those vehicles are pretty impressive themselves.
Wow, this is great.
Yeah, it's interesting to be out there in the truck.
We were having fun with GT4s, McLaren 720s, and a couple of other 911s and some other vehicles that were out there just having a good old time, and we were keeping a pretty good pace with them. So.
And Blake, you were saying?
That section, which is quite technical, the Rivian was a lot of fun. Like, I mean, it really handled so well that I was like, okay, we need to do another lap, because we were kind of debating, should we come back in? This is obviously Robert's daily driver, so didn't want to beat up this car.
None of that, but he's scared. Robert is. We have another video clip. I'll put a little piece in here. Your leg is shaking.
Oh yeah.
I'm really nervous.
So I mean, I'm used to driving fast. I've driven sports cars as well, just like Blake has, and I've driven a bunch of high performance vehicles. And I'm used to being in the driver's seat under control. When I'm in the passenger seat, you don't have that same sense of control. And you know, I love Blake. Don't get me wrong, I love him with everything, but it's also the fact that I'm entrusting my baby to him, and he's doing the full send. So this is what I was talking about here. You know, we just cut the curves. We didn't even bother just chicaning through. We just cut them out.
And you're hanging with this car in front of you pretty well there.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's a GT4. I don't know. I don't know if it's a.
it was the GT4. Yeah.
Yeah, and that vehicle is going to be on. I think he was on either Cup tires or our compound. So the fact that we were on the Yokohama Landers, which are made more for off-road use, it was super balanced. I was like, part of that extra weight of the tires, I believe, is more of a sidewall stiffness and stability, and it actually translates very well to the vehicle control at that high speed. It feels very planted and wasn't rolling over the tire a lot, so inspired me to go, hey, let's keep having fun. Here, it would be nice to
So
have a little bit more top speed, honestly, because
Yeah.
you're just like they're going, man, this thing's got the power for it, but it just runs out of gearing.
Yeah.
and just in this section, you were talking about a little bit more about the performance of the vehicle. So I want to talk more about that. Like, how did it feel on the track compared to some of the other cars you've driven?
Well, I'm going to actually compare it to other trucks. It was exceptional. I mean, it's something where it was a lot of fun. Like there are vehicles that have straight line capability that are like the Rivian as far as something that is able to do a sub 3 second 0 to 60, but that doesn't mean it always translates to overall vehicle balance. And what made it fun is that it had a tossability to it that kind of inspires you to go out and play around and have fun versus just being frustrated, like, oh, it could be so much better. It actually was absolutely great. It just needed higher top speed, and ultimately, we'd love to have had some more laps.
And in this last section here, you were just talking about how if with a little bit of practice, you think it could hang with that other car. Tell me
I would
more
say,
about that.
yeah, it might require a different set of tires, but it really would be exciting to see with a performance orientated tire setup on a Rivian R1T what it would be capable of, and I would imagine it would be 5 to 8 seconds quicker a lap than what we did.
Yeah.
And the other thing would be if we're going to do repeated laps, I was really impressed with the stock braking system, but we didn't do more than a couple laps. So it would be interesting to see kind of where those limits are. But you could really feel the motors working to pretty much vector the vehicle where the driver wanted based on kind of yaw rate and steering angle. I mean, to me, we we were out there, and I've driven a lot of Model 3 performances, Model 3 long ranges, the rear wheel drive. The stability and traction control, even at the setting we had, allowed for a lot more playfulness than anything that isn't a track mode equipped Tesla. Like I've driven a lot of standard Teslas around tracks, and while they're very strong in straight line with good top speed, 130, 140 mile an hour plus, even like in a Model Y long range. Um, the braking system lets you down, as well as just the overall stability systems are such that they they make the limit so much lower than what actually the car mechanically is capable of doing. Whereas the Rivian is maximizing the tires very well. It feels responsive. It obviously it owes to the motorsports heritage of a lot of their developers because they do come from a motorsports background. So they infuse that DNA into the handling of the vehicle, and I think it's freaking awesome. I mean, it's a lot of fun. I'd love
Do
to
you
have
feel that?
three of them out there battling. Like
Yeah, that'd be fun. Do you feel that motorsports heritage when you drive it around a track?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the turn-in capability, the way it exits corners. I'd like to see it with full traction and everything off. But I think that where we started with was a good temperament of a balance of stability systems helping, as well as still allowing some attitude change with the car and being able to toss around a little bit. I mean, there's a few times where if sending it a little bit harder than maybe the traditional driver would, you could kind of feel the stability system and the motors working to kind of arrest that motion and keep it right on that tidy line. Versus, I think with a full off, you might be able to send the car into a drift and do a nice little full slide. But we will leave that for another video.
I will not be riding with you when you do that. Maybe I will. Hey, Blake, I want to go back just a minute or so here, because you're talking a little bit about the performance, and I'd just like you to listen to what you're saying and then maybe elaborate on it a little bit here.
It's actually, in a way, maybe because I didn't expect anything.
Yeah.
But I'm like, that was more fun than driving my flat. Because it feels like I'm in Gran Turismo and I picked this completely ridiculous car to try to race a buddy that doesn't play much.
Gotcha.
And I picked a car that like is gonna get its butt kicked. But then you just drive the wheels off of it, it's fun.
Okay, can you tell me a little bit about what you're saying there, Blake?
So from a signal reception, it was a little bit choppy, but I can absolutely kind of encapsulate what I recall, and that is that you go into it from a standpoint of what the vehicle's off-road capabilities are and what its capabilities as a truck are. And so the expectations for that all-around performance are not actually there. You don't come into it with going, this is going to be a lot of fun and rewarding, meaning that it has good feedback from what's happening with the tires, with the steering system. It allows you to start to refine and have fun with it. And it did remind me of with playing video games. You know, a lot of times I would play simulators or video games with other friends who don't play them as much, don't have as much experience. And I would intentionally pick like a Raptor or some type of truck like that has decent on-road capability and just wring its neck to keep up with buddy that's in, you know, a sports car. And it kind of felt like reliving that in the real world. And
Oh, wow.
it's so much fun because if you're absolutely the underdog. And I would love to see like Robert's vehicle. COTA is a lot of fun and it's got enough space to keep momentum, so on and so forth. I'd love to see it with some upgraded brake pads and a more track orientated set of tires and wheels that possibly are even lighter still, and maybe even, you know, ditch the rear seats and a few things, but then it gets a little bit away from the standard vehicle. But yeah, I think it should be really potent. And what is interesting is that somebody is running a Rivian, to my knowledge, up Pike's Peak this year. So it'll be very interesting to see how their performance goes. That's Pike's is a totally different type of requirements than say COTA, just because of duration, the inclination, everything about it just puts so much more load. But yeah, I'd actually like to see the Rivian on a track that's a little bit tighter than even COTA, because then we would be able to get to that 110 mile an hour pretty much anywhere, but not have to be kind of waiting for everybody to pass us on the straightaways. You know, I think that's really the Achilles of that. COTA is a very high speed track. So
I'm gonna finish out this
It does have
second
stability
pass
control,
here.
but it lets it get a little bit.
So I did reduce the stability control, so
Yeah.
we can go one level less.
You know, it's interesting. I wouldn't mind leaving it where it is because I feel like
yeah, our starter person was like, "How was it?" I remember that.
Anything more would just be
Talk
to
fun.
me more
about-
We got more than a few
As
when
the
we were pulling in and out.
Yeah. As an uninitiated, talk to me more about stability control and what
is
that means to a
surprising.
driver.
Oh my
Wait,
god!
hold on. I want you
You
to.
finally got the Rivian out. I talked to you yesterday.
We're gonna go back out. I'm like, this thing. I think this would do like a mid 230.
Yeah? It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I'm a little jealous myself.
It's
I think pretty
crazy.
So you say it'll do a mid 230. Tell me what that means.
All right.
I would estimate that its lap time would be somewhere in the 2-minute 30-second range, which is quite quick. I mean, that is sports car territory with normal street tires. You know, like for context, the fastest laps we were doing were low 220s in the Plaid, which actually we did set 3 records with the Plaid that weekend. One was the highest top speed for a production EV, 175 miles an hour. The other was the fastest time on street tires. So Yokohama AO52s, we did a 2-minute 23 approximately. And then we came back out with Yokohama A005s and we did a low 221, which actually was about 2 seconds faster than any production EV. Now there was the Neo that ran there that did do a faster time, but I don't count that as being a production vehicle per se because there was 3 produced and yeah, it's unobtainium, whereas the Plaid is something somebody can actually go and purchase. So a 230 is what I did in the Model 3 Performance.
Wow.
So even better.
And that's for what's the distance?
I think it's a
230?
little over 3.6, 3.8, somewhere in that range. Is that correct, Robert?
Yeah,
I have to remember off the top of my head.
yeah, I believe it's about 3.6 all the way around.
All right, that's the end of our first pass. Like I said, I'll add some video as in a separate video here so that we can watch the whole thing raw. But I do want to ask a little bit more technical question, Blake. Tell me about traction control. As an uninitiated, I don't know much about that. What should I know about traction control?
Well, let's just start with internal combustion vehicles. Traction control and or stability management typically will control wheel spin so that the tires stay within their limits for accelerated force as well as for driver confidence. And typically a stability management or a stability control type technology is one that comes in more into play during any type of steering maneuver or transient where the vehicle is trying to figure out what would be the driver's intended line and working the braking system in conjunction with an internal combustion, backing a little bit out of the throttle or manipulating the throttle with the computer to balance those tires. I mean, ultimately, you've got a vehicle that's putting all of what you want to happen into 4 contact patches that are about the size of your hands that are making control with the surface. And if you exceed what those tires can do, then you'll not only be slower, but from a driver confidence standpoint, unless you are a trained professional, it's very unnerving and takes away some of the joy of it. So when you step over to electric vehicles like the Rivian, you have 4 motors that can independently be controlled at a frequency or a rate that is much better resolution than you're going to get with any internal combustion. So where the Rivian has a huge advantage is that they're able to not only use braking systems to maintain what the driver wants to have happen safely, but they're also able to utilize each of those motors independently to be able to actually get a much finer tuned result to where the tires can stay closer to their perfect amount of grip versus a haphazardly grabbing the brakes. So, I mean, your brakes are able to
Gotcha.
rotational speed of the wheel, whereas your motor, because it's geared, has a frequency that sometimes is 7 to 10 times better resolution. So, for uninitiated, bottom
Wow.
line, Rivian has a threshold of refinement and ability to do more that's a factor of 5 to 10 times better than a lot of this just traditional braking system type stability that would be out there in an internal combustion. So you're starting with a better platform. And then within the Rivian, we didn't get a chance to do full stability and traction off. But what's nice is that from a traction control standpoint, almost all of that can be managed. Traction control is typically your forward motion type of keeping grip so you don't have too much wheel spin. But the Rivian can do that pretty much all motor side versus having to rely on braking, which in other vehicles that, let's talk about the Plaid real quick. The Plaid's front motor has an open differential. So when I'm taking that around the race course, like say Daytona or others where there's long sweeping high speed exits, the front inside tire is wanting to spin out. And the only way to stop that from happening is they have to back the throttle down a little bit and use the brakes to stop that wheel, which adds heat to the brakes. The Rivian doesn't have to do that because it has independent motors up front. So it actually is, from a technical capability, it's superior to even the Plaid when it comes to stability control and traction management. It's pretty cool. Makes it,
That's crazy. That
yeah.
is crazy. Robert, what's it like riding at through this track with a professional driver?
Well, as I said, I trust Blake, and I love him to death. But it was a little nerve wracking, putting my truck in his hands. But I had full confidence in him after everything I've been through with him that it was gonna be just fine. So
And very
So I just did some
candidly,
quick.
I was going to say, Scott, if I had a twin that had my exact capabilities, even then, I think if I was in the passenger seat, it it would be a little unnerving because you're just moving at such a quick rate in this beast of a vehicle. You know,
Yeah,
I
for
mean,
sure.
but
you're
but but
actually kind
that
of like
that goes back to
outside of like,
I've got high performance vehicles as well outside of this, and driving those, again, when you're a driver, like Blake said, when you're a driver, it's a different animal. You have a different feel of the vehicle. I had no feedback whatsoever. I had no steering wheel. I couldn't feel the pedals. I couldn't feel anything. All I could do was literally sit there and stare forward and say, okay, there's a turn coming. I know that I need to be turning,
Bad
but I'm
idea.
not. I have no control on this.
I can see that. I mean, I'm nervous when I'm in a car just driving around town when someone else is driving. It's just a natural thing for me. But um, I have one important question left, Blake. Do you ever get car sick?
I do actually. There's been a few times. So I had been a professional instructor for many years, and there, I don't want to hate on Audis, but when we would do BMW, because I had done BMW versus Audi programs, and the body control motions of some of the Audis with your typical everyday driver kind of hacking at the wheel when they're first learning. Yeah, I've gotten quite sick a few times.
It's
Outside
something
that,
that
no,
I suffer with.
I mean, the trick is always eyes up and look ahead.
Yeah.
Kind of like the same thing with a roller coaster, like if you're following where the roller coaster is going to go, you're less
Yeah.
likely to get sick. If you close your eyes and get scared, then cold sweats are ensuing, and you're going to have to get out of the car.
Well, I think that the suspension system on the Rivian helps a little bit too because you don't lean quite as much thanks to the way it sort of levels itself out.
Yeah, and you have air suspension that they can control some of the spring rate as well as having active dampening, to my knowledge, right, Robert? That
Yeah.
does have magnetic shocks on there? Because it does feel like the roll stiffness and damping.
It's got
Yeah,
hydromagnetic shocks.
I
Yeah.
mean that's those type of tool sets really allows you to have a vehicle that can go from ultra plush and or long travel suspension off road to something that is nice and tight or taut to control body motions. And that's a huge win when you start talking about the physics we're trying to overcome with 7,000 pounds.
Yeah. Blake, can you tell us what's up for you next? And, do you have any other people you want or things you want to plug for what you're working on?
Yeah, so I guess we'll talk a little bit about the other reason why I was out at Circuit of America, and that was ultimately to see if we could break a record in the Plaid, which thanks to Chin Track Days and Yokohama, NRS Brakes, we have Unplugged Performance that has helped us, Sparco, AEM, all of those sponsors have enabled our program to visit dozens of tracks in the last year and be able to set record times at Homestead, Sebring, Daytona. We did set the fastest Tesla time at Road Atlanta recently, but
Nice.
um, unfortunately, our session had to be cut short. So what would have been the ultimate record lap, where we were out to beat the Porsche record, we missed that by about a half a second, but we will easily beat that next time we go out. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's kind of a trifecta of goals. One is to be able to show that the electric performance side of things are not just in a straight line, and to highlight the overall capabilities. The next is to really get a lot of data and to baseline where the industry is and look for rooms of improvement. And then finally is to bring the fun and education and enjoyment of others that are starting to get into you know, as you said yourself, this is the highest performance, most capable vehicle you've ever owned. And what electric vehicles are doing through Tesla, Lucid, Rivian, and others is bring speed into a very approachable level for people who never purchased sports cars before, but now have vehicles that out accelerate Ferraris. So having a venue like Chin Track Days allows for the uninitiated to become initiated and to also to be able to get some of the skills that candidly are a really good safety aspect to understand the vehicle you're working with. I mean, this is it's a loaded handgun, and so it's a matter of kind of going to the shooting range once in a while and getting some proper instruction so that you know what you're doing with that weapon. And yeah, that's it. But for up next, right now, actually, on a personal level, just going to be moving into a new place, which I'm really excited about, that actually will allow me to have a workspace and a workshop that we have not had for a while to be able to develop some vehicles and do some projects. And through Chin Track Days, we hope to get back to Road Atlanta for a record. Hope to get to VIR for a record. And, you know, if budget allows, maybe Watkins Glen and others. We will not be at Pikes Peak this year just because of personal time conflicts and other achievements we want to do. But yeah, it's really about going out there, breaking records and raising awareness. And it's a lot of fun. And there's a lot of editing. If anybody does video editing, please call me, because I have so many videos that are, you know, raw in the can, so to speak, that are just epic, showing what we find. And if
I was going to ask you where people could follow along with what you're doing.
Yeah, so electricperformance.tv is probably the simplest. It needs a little bit of an update, but at least that gets you some information about what we're up to. It gives you a point of contact for my email address. It also gives you a link to my YouTube channel, which is Electric Performance, and a way to follow and subscribe for content. One thing that if we get an opportunity to, I need to get you the video of me taking along some of the Chin Track Day guys for rides in the Plaid, where we do some full send drifts around COTA. A lot of fun. It really was. Yeah, they.
Oh, please, yes, please share that.
Cool.
Robert, what's the next record you're going to set?
Next record I'm setting is whichever one Blake pulls me along to, because I'll be bringing the Rivian. But I'm going to be heading to Big Bend State Park here in a couple of days. Go do some off-roading in Big Bend in the middle of nowhere. And then probably just coming out and go see Blake and running some tracks around with him. So.
Awesome. And that's just a good reminder that this is not just a race car. It's also a four-wheel drive vehicle that does really well off-road too. Getting around town and everything.
It was, the day before that I went out to Circuit of the Americas, I had my rooftop tent on there. I had my light bar set up. I had my radio gear in there. I had, as Blake alluded to, I probably had about 1,500 pounds of gear stuffed in the truck. And all that came out for the track day, and then turned around and put it all back on. So it's a really capable vehicle. On again.
Wow. That's so great. Well, Blake, anytime you're out in Denver, let me know. We'll get together and do a little driving around. And both of you, thank you so much for your time and for sharing this your expertise and this fun video. And good luck with everything.
Cool. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.